is how do you pick a real estate agent?
Yes, so
That can be a couple of different things. Agents are now probably better educated as well as to what properties are going to sell
talking
for.
about it over coffee when we used to just catch up for coffee and not record it. You talk about it in a way that's accessible and easy to listen.
If you've been in your career for a short while, how do you take yourself to the next level?
Yep.
It was really
a
good.
podcast.
Yeah,
Clearly.
exactly right. Yeah, epic
This
West guy.
week on the property part. Welcome back to the Property Pod, your accessible and easy to listen to way into the real estate market. I'm Aaron, your host, and I'm joined by only one real estate agent today, John McGregor.
Oh yeah.
It's funny, we've just been running through this kind of rotational seat policy here. We can't all seem to get in the same space at once.
Yeah, exactly. But I think last one, Pat was the one manning the helm, and he was an exceptional button pusher.
He did pretty well, yeah. I'll put it out there. It was a good listen.
He was looking professional, up and down with the volume and all that kind of stuff. So I was very impressed with his ability.
No, look, I was impressed with the episode. It was good to hear that you got it all put together while I was away. I was at a wedding, a midweek wedding.
A midweek wedding, was
it?
it? Oh, I forgot about that.
It was like a COVID wedding that had been meant to be at the start of the year, delayed, and then I think the date ended up, like December 1st, whatever it was, ended up being an important day for their relationship. So they said, oh, bugger it. Like, if we've had to move it, let's move it to where we want to move it.
Oh, good on him. You know, like
it was really cool.
Because everyone that means the most will be there. You know, it's like you'll make your way, you'll do whatever it takes to get there, and then everyone, if there's anything else, like, whatever.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was a cracking wedding. It was up the east coast of Tassie. It was really, really nice. So, yeah, that's why I was away this week. But Pat is being a father of the year. It's his little girl's last day of kindergarten.
That's pretty cool.
He's up there for their end of school assembly, which is pretty cute.
It's going to be, I must think, I mean, obviously, to be a parent, looking back at how painful some of those things must be to listen to. Like, I remember when we were, they had our whole class with recorders playing the exact same note, and then you're forced to listen to that. Like, I mean, that's love.
Man, whoever was the guy that got recorders into schools he's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. They're really cheap.
Yeah, he's still laughing.
And they sound really good, we promise.
That's
a sales guy.
Oh, absolutely. And it must have been the same feeling of that old show, Captain Pugwash, where they had, Seaman Staines and who was the other guy?
Master Bates.
Master Bates, that it must have been the exact same thing for that guy with the recorders, I reckon.
If anyone has questions about that, email John at 414.com.au and he will explain exactly what that means.
Exactly. So with that in mind, we've got topics to discuss with great people in the show.
Look, this week we're going to have Mandy Welling on the show. So Mandy Welling is the president of the REIT. She's been in the real estate industry for, I think, almost 15, 16 years. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong there, John.
I think it was 2003, I think she started.
So she is a wealth of knowledge and she's reached the top of the tree in terms of the REIT, and it's crazy. She's kind of only taken on the role in the last 12 months. So just prior to COVID hitting, she had no idea that her year was just going to be thrown into turmoil.
What's that old saying, out of the furnace into the fire or something like that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the exciting things about Mandy, for me, for people to see is that think of your typical, stereotypical real estate agent and what that looks like and what that means, and then flip it as a 180, and Mandy's the complete opposite.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That sounds interesting.
She's just someone who loves the industry. She knows it. She cares. Got a lot of respect for Mandy. I'm really excited to have her on.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, let's jump off to that. We'll just see how it goes.
Cool.
Awesome. All right.
414 Property Co. All types of property for all types of people. At 414 Property Co, we believe that property is for everyone. White collar, blue collar, no collar, dog collar. Whoever you are, we will find the property for you. Contact 414 Property Co at www.414.com.au.
All right, that's right. We are back on deck with a very special guest today. We've reached to the top of the tree in real estate in Tasmania. We've gone all the way up to the president of the REIT. Is that right, John?
That's exactly right.
So we've got Mandy Welling in with us. Thanks for coming in, Mandy.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's really cool to have you in. It's kind of a really busy time of the year, and thank you for giving us your time.
Pleasure.
So, Mandy, just for all the people out there listening that are unaware, could you fill us in on kind of yourself, your real estate background, how you kind of got into the game and how you reached the top of the tree?
Yeah, sure. Well, it still feels like a bit of a whirlwind, like it's not real, to be honest. So I started in the industry in 2003, hit the industry with a thud to be told that the exam pass mark was 75%. And I was pretty confident then that that was my out.
Good to set yourself high expectations.
Yeah. So thankfully passed. came into the industry within 4 days, listed my first property 2 days later and sold it 7 days after that.
Yeah, wow.
So that was the start, 2003, which was fantastic. Very shortly after that, about 2 years after, I went looking for something else, so I enrolled in the Certificate 4 and the diploma. Completed the diploma in 2009, then wanted desperately to know what it was like to use that diploma and manage an office. So in 2010, I was working for a company on the Eastern Shore, and that was experiencing some challenges. And so it was my job then to be put in front of that and fix it.
Yeah, cool.
So in 2014, after 18 months, I turned that business around by 248% and nominated for the Telstra Businesswoman Award.
Yeah. Oh, wow. There you go. Yeah.
So,
this is a whirlwind. This is really interesting. I'm just like, tell me more.
It still feels like a bit of a dream.
Yeah.
So with the Telstra Businesswomen's Award, that was, I think, 4,002 nominees, and I finished in the top 18. So that was just...
So that's nationwide.
It was actually Tasmanian,
Okay,
and so it goes state by state, and then the winners for the categories go national.
Yeah.
So then in 2016, needed a bit of a break. It was a bit full on 85-hour weeks. So went to run a retirement village. No experience in retirement villages, so it was under construction, brand new. Really had no idea what I was doing, but this I can't fail scenario kicked in. Yeah. And we've just finished our 50th villa in that site, and we only have 3 left to sell. But about 2.5 years ago, I decided to start my own company, which I did.
Because it's amazing too, because we've known each other for years.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And to think that, because I know you well enough to, like, the depth of your experience and the experience, like the ups and downs that have happened, it's so surreal just to summarise it in 60 seconds.
It still scares me
to
say it like that, because it's just, I mean, you know better than anybody. You just keep going. And it's one of the job has to be done. People are relying on you, and you just push through and you just do your job.
Yeah.
And it's not until somebody makes you stand still and think about exactly what you've done that you realise what you have done.
Yeah, I think real estate's one of the best industries. If you want to watch your life pass by in an instant, get into real estate because it's just the weeks and months and years just really, I mean, anyone could say this, but it just bleeds into one, because you've got, I think of it in timelines where, properties will go from like listed to under offer in 7 days, and then it could last over 6 months. So you've got like 100 different competing timelines all happening at once.
So many balls in the air that you're trying to keep up there and make sure they're all accounted for.
All accounted for, because ultimately that's the only way in which you get remunerated when money changes hands. And if it falls through, well then so does your lunch.
Yeah, that's right. And start again. And I think this is where it becomes part of who you are and not what you do.
Yeah.
And I think you hear a lot of agents say that. My husband's never actually called my job. He calls it my social exercise.
Well, I must say, one of the reasons why I've admired you so much, because you taught me a lot too when I first started, was that it's an extension of who you are. Yeah. So you wouldn't meet you and say, "Oh, Mandy's a real estate agent." It's Mandy Welling, and then you're just doing your thing. Like there's no change in personality. It's not like you're one way or speak another. It really is just an extension of who you are. And I think that's what to me has admired you, and what's made you really exceptional, both selling agent and manager, is that it's just your personality applied with your work ethic. And I think that for me is what's enabled you to excel in so many different areas in this industry.
But I think that's probably one of the benefits of the job, though, because you don't have to be somebody that you're not. And the second that you do, you're off.
Yeah, people can see through that
people
and work out
clever.
that there's like, there's something not right here. This guy's putting on a show.
Yeah.
Whereas, oh no, this person's genuine and really has my best interests at heart.
Yeah.
I want to know more and I want to work with that person.
Yeah, because it's a really big deal. Like the real estate transaction is massive, whether it be from a tenant's perspective, a landlord's perspective, a seller or a buyer. So it's a massive deal. And if they think that you're not engaged with them, it has to be, even if you have like the analytical individual, the heart individual, they all want to know that you're invested in the job that they're asking you to do for them.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Mandy. And I think one of the biggest things that I specifically learnt too is that provided that, you come from a good place and, an authentic place first, is that everyone has to be dealt with in a different way, because we communicate in different ways. We all have different needs. But fundamentally, the process broken down, it's a huge issue, huge, I suppose, experience selling your property. But from our perspective is that, well, we've got the one job, which is to get the person to the next chapter.
Correct.
And however, I suppose, that has to happen, well, then that becomes through the relationship you create.
Yeah, definitely. And I think once upon a time, as you probably all heard this before, we were the gatekeepers of all the information as far as real estate was concerned. And people relied heavily on us for the knowledge side of it. The roles have reversed now. And the general public can get their hands on this information quite quickly. So they're now relying on us from our professional perspective with regards to marketing and that personal touch. So making the transaction as smooth as possible, that's more our role now than anything else.
I guess you don't want that jaded kind of real estate agent that's done this 1,000 times and just rolls through and
Does
just,
the same thing.
look, this is just how it's done. This is the procedure. You want that personal experience where it's like, they really cared about selling my home or finding the right buyer for this. Like these were our wish list of what we're after.
Yeah, and see, this is an interesting thing. You can have. That's why experience sometimes doesn't necessarily mean much. Why that's the case is that you can have like a person who's had the same year 30 times versus someone who's changed over 30 years. It's like, that old saying, getting stuck in their ways. As it was, I've been in the industry 30 years, but you're still doing it the same way you did 30 years ago.
And you touch on a really valuable point there, John, because one of the other things I missed was the fact I've been a registered trainer for the REIT since 2008. And one of the questions we get in the classroom is a lot of people, let's say the northern suburbs for argument's sake, you've got all these very prominent agents, the Pauls, the Patricks, the Tony Colleges, all these really prominent real estate agents operating in the northern suburbs, the Chris McGregors, the John McGregors.
I don't know. I've heard of Luke McGregor. He did a show called Rosso.
He's really funny,
He's really funny. I know his dad, Chris.
Well, the questions that we sort of get hit with are, how on earth do I go out and do an appraisal up against somebody with 30 years experience, as you mentioned? And the answer is simple: enthusiasm sells.
Yeah.
Because I think sadly, as we continue in the industry, our enthusiasm can waver.
Yeah.
But the newcomer into our industry is full of enthusiasm. And that's really infectious. And it's really common to see somebody with 6 months' worth of experience come over the top of a 30-year experienced agent on the grounds that their enthusiasm wins the race.
Yeah, they just go in there with like, you are everything in the world to me. I will do everything it absolutely takes. And then next to them is this, guy or girl's been too long. Just cynicism's just settled in just a little too much.
Yeah.
Or complacency even.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful that our industry has sort of moved past the conversation that we were having a moment ago about what people are expecting now in the industry. So they really don't want that tired real estate agent of decades and decades ago. They want this really prominent, driven individual working for them with passion. And I think that that's what our industry is producing in bucket loads now.
Well, see, this is really interesting because from, those who don't know, you are still operating as a sales agent, as a business owner, as a trainer, and now as a board member as a industry leader. So you're operating on sort of all runs of the spectrum in that sense.
Yeah.
For all those that are listening out there, John's just built a tower of Jenga out of his hands as he's gone through each of those lists. I'm like, damn, like that's going to tumble, John. You better be really careful.
Oh no, not with these solid foundations. So with that, then I suppose I'm really interested to see, Mandy. Then you just said that what the new agent is in many ways. Now you're part of that process of educating and bringing them into the industry. How has that changed the way that you teach and train, and the message that the message you received when you started versus the message that's getting received now?
I think for me it is all about training.
Okay.
So just really the fact that we have issued licences again is really important, because when we abolish licences, so agents could come into the industry or property representatives could come into our industry, do a mild qualification, and then that was it. There was no minimum requirement every 12 months. When we brought licences back into force, they had to have a minimum of 8 hours worth of training per annum, so minimum. So that sort of, I think that created that little bit of a better entity in the industry, because that's where things would slip through the cracks.
Yep.
Because if the business owners were going to the meetings to update them on legislative changes and all the things that were happening in our industry, if they weren't effectively filtering that down through to their staff, my fear was we would have a lot of people out there operating in our industry without the current knowledge. That was my big fear. So I was really excited to see the licensing come back in.
So just for the guy on the outside, how long was the period of time that the cowboys were out there just kind of going wild?
It actually related to even those that had previously been licensed, the licence was removed.
Okay.
So essentially, apart from someone that had a diploma, there was no requirement for a licence, but it was about 6 years.
Okay, yep. So there was kind of this cowboy period in the middle where you could...
No minimum standard as far as training was concerned.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm very grateful to say that a lot of people, whether it be franchises, marketing groups or independents, were still putting their staff through these training groups, sending them off to the REIT for training as well. That was all really, really important, and we were really happy to see it.
And this is something that sort of strikes me, is that you'd be familiar with the stat that generally speaking, 90% whoever joins the industry, specifically for sales agents, will be gone in the first 2 years.
Yep.
In many ways, I think the expectation's different, and sometimes the level of entry can be a little bit too easy sometimes.
Yep.
However, in Tasmania, we've probably got the most regimented and in-depth training, introduction training across Australia. And a lot of our models now, there are other REI presidents trying to model what Tasmania's done, and we're still trying to lift the bar to make it, it's not so much about being harder, but to make sure that there's more competent people coming through.
Yeah,
Would that be right?
You've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what we're doing. So as far as the REIT goes, our CEO meets with all the other countrywide CEOs, and that's a really common conversation that's had there, is the level of our minimum requirements in comparison to the rest of the country.
And it might be a good opportunity to just take a step back for a second to walk, because obviously mention the fact that you've done, sales agent, business owner, trainer, and president of the REIT. Could you walk us through what the REIT is?
Definitely, yeah. So first and foremost, the REIT is a training organisation.
Stands for Real Estate Institute of Tasmania.
Correct. Sorry, I should have been a bit more advanced than that. Thanks, John. But yeah, so first and foremost, we are a recognised and registered training authority. We then take a membership, so people can actually come to us and pay an annual membership, and that gives them access to the training calendar. It also gives them access to, they can actually call the REIT and get general advice as well. We also issue them through an electronic platform called REI Forms Live, all of the forms that they'll need to operate as a real estate agent in Tasmania as well. Second to being a training authority or organisation, we lobby government. So for anything that affects real estate in Tasmania, that's where we step in. So I say with a shiver, the moratorium at the moment out there, that's something that we've fought very hard for, and we've made our primary role through COVID-19 was to extract this information from government and provide it to our members as quickly as humanly possible in the form of Zoom. So we were doing those really regularly, so a couple of times a week. We were meeting on Zoom with our REIT staff who were working from home on a daily basis as well. So that was our primary role. Looking forward, we're looking at things like the amendments to the Residential Tenancy Act, the Land Titles Act. So there are a few things in the works for next year as well.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because there's what I suppose many people don't recognise is that there's a lot of a discussion, especially when COVID first came out. Obviously, it was the geared focused on making sure that everyone had a home to stay in, which could say tenant focused, right? I'll simplify it. Then obviously, once all this has changed, well, all of a sudden the landlords started to have a voice saying, "Hey, what about us?" All of a sudden, and then the conversation flipped on its head. From the very beginning, though, like you said, the REIT was there trying to extract that information, provide education. But in those moments too, where they've just had another extension on it, the REIT was fighting exceptionally hard to have a say and enable the landlords and stuff like that to have a voice that otherwise didn't. And so sometimes the industry's fighting a battle that no one knows about.
Yeah, correct. And that's happening on a daily basis. So when COVID first hit and that piece of legislation or that bill was first passed, we weren't consulted with at all.
Which is crazy.
Exactly.
It's so odd because anything that involves the industry, you'd think that wouldn't they discuss it with a dedicated industry body?
We're a stakeholder, a major stakeholder.
Yeah.
So and I think they saw it and again it's just from a different perspective. So one of the issues that I have with that is obviously real estate agencies aren't charities. They have to make a living. They have to pay their staff and pay their overheads. So the scenario that I gave that day was what could potentially happen is if the tenants are not paying their rent, not affected by COVID, just those tenants that have just decided to stop paying rent, We are sincerely sorry for those that have been affected by COVID and have struggled to pay their rent. We completely understand that. But this one, I'm sort of speaking now on behalf of those that have just chosen not to pay their rent.
Yep.
With those, essentially what happened, the Real Estate Institute of Australia did a survey a couple of years ago that showed that 80% of investors around the entire country earned $75,000 or less.
Wow.
So those investors are relying heavily on things like capital negative gearing. They probably have a mortgage themselves and probably obviously a mortgage on their own investment property. So the second that the tenant's not paying rent, there's no management fee coming into the agency either. How long does anyone think that an agency can operate like that before they have to gracefully bow out and say, I'm so sorry, but I can't manage your property anymore?
Yep.
Then this is where the fear sets in. Then you have landlords with no understanding of the legislation managing tenants who have no understanding of the legislation. And where on earth is that going to land? That was probably my biggest concern, if they think outside the box and think not just about today, and I completely appreciate what they had to think about.
Absolutely.
But there was a lot more on the boil in the background.
Yep.
So, and I think they were the things that because this bill was enacted so quickly, it just wasn't played out.
Absolutely. And so what's that been like shifting from, day one in your industry, focusing on nothing but making a sale, to now you have to hold a much bigger picture in mind? What's that like for you now?
Well, I offered the job back to the former president 6 times and he wouldn't take it.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah.
So for 6 years, our former president, 5 years, our former president was acting as president. And then I stepped in mid-October and then we were hit in the face in late February, March with COVID.
Yeah.
So I thought my first year would have all this wonderful knowledge of all of our board members, and we have multiple former presidents on our board. So I thought this is going to be a wonderful 12 months with all this knowledge and advice around me to help me sort of sail through the first 12 months and then really define what it is that I want to do as a president for the industry from there. Haven't had that opportunity yet.
Yeah.
So it's just been keep your head above water, keep the industry informed and do the best you can.
Again, though, that sounds exactly kind of like your description of your whole career through the just leveling up and finding like that whatever happens, you'll just still make your way through it. And just kind
when
of
does the plateau come?
Yeah.
never.
Wasn't that what they say is that challenges are never put on to people, or that only great challenges are put on people who have the capacity to work through them.
I love that, and you know why I love that? Because this is not a self-serving role.
No.
This is a what can we do for you role, as is sales and property management and all the things affiliated with real estate. So I think there is no greater pressure than the dependence of somebody else. So when somebody else is depending on you and their money is riding on the back of you, you've just got to continue to step it up over and over and over. You can't just there's no rest.
Yeah. It's just it's on your shoulders and now you're bearing it.
Yeah, but I love it.
Yeah.
I actually like it.
Well, I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? We could quickly have a laugh, say, "Oh, why does Mandy get such a hard deal? She loves it."
And I sort of do.
Well, the thing is, though, is that in those immense points of pressure, is that like that's where the greatest growth and the greatest education comes. So all those things that might have been stressed you out many years ago, they wouldn't even register now. You've got bigger
not
issues.
at all.
You've got the capacity to take on new challenges.
Yeah, definitely. And it sort of was exaggerated with COVID with the retirement village as well, because that's essentially real estate as well. It's selling a leasehold. But just having to implement all the systems, like all the policies and procedures for an entity like that where I had no experience before, but the real estate background came to the fore because I pretty much took all the real estate knowledge and popped it into that place. But it was just exaggerated because we are a demographic where they were at higher risk than everybody else. So when we had to implement our restrictions on open homes, and then when we were allowed to do open homes and inspections and things like that, what we actually had to do to be able to fit that format, that was multiplied by about 50 in our retirement village. So I sort of carried that over into my business as well because it was just trickling from one to the other. So I probably overcompensated, but that was not a bad thing because for the rest of the industry to see that we all have to do the right thing was really important. Was that
playing on your mind as well? Because I know if you're an industry leader, you'd say, so you're the one who has to lead, lead through example. Is that what you mean by keeping on your mind? I mean, obviously, I
Yeah.
think I know you well enough that that's just what you would do anyway. But now you're carrying this, weight, you'd say, and responsibility. Was that playing on your mind as you rolled out these things through your new business?
It certainly was, because it was our industry were looking to the people at the front for questions, answers, direction, all those sorts of things. So it was really important that we were always doing the right thing. So I appreciate your comment, John. I would like to think that it wasn't a big shift for me to be able to do that, because we'd been doing it anyway. But it was just really important, because we wanted nobody in our industry to be able to say, well, why do I have to? Because they're not.
Yes.
So the REIT went overboard
Yep.
with all their implementation of COVID-19 restrictions as well. So that was next level as well. So yeah.
Well, I know even when we were operating, because my dad's on the board, so our office was under the sort of the same. I'd say we'd put ourselves under the same expectation as well. But then on a practitioner's level, because there's a part of you that goes, but you're just making it too difficult, and I just need this, because your brain's trying really hard to weasel your way out of your responsibility. Is the easiest way to think about it.
And I had I'd just fall short of saying hundreds of phone calls for people asking questions. Well, if I just do no, and I was quite blunt towards the end, and I would say something along the lines of, you can ask me the same question 27 different ways, but I'm going to continuously give you the same answer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much, and that sort of let that die down. So, and the industry did convert to that quite quickly, but there was a lot of that at the start. Like, well, what if I just do this? And how about you just don't do that?
Well, and the irony is too, is it's not sometimes from the agent, but it's the pressure from their clients.
Yes.
That are going, and they're like, hey, but I want to do this, and so then the agent's like, what do we do? Like, I'll try and help out, and so they go back up and say, can I, because I want to do this, because they're on my back, and then but coming back down is like, no, sorry, we have to stick to our guns.
Yeah, definitely, and it is. I think the scary part to that was nobody knew how long this was going to go for.
Yeah.
That was a big thing.
And the other thing was, like, I think March through May, everybody was kind of like watching the news and finding out, like, so what am I allowed to do this week? Like, am I allowed to do this?
And it was changing weekly.
Yeah, so it was kind of very fluid, and it would be so difficult to be running something as at the top of the tree, and people coming to you and being like, yeah, well, as far as the information we've got, it says this is what you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
We're not choosing to say you can't have an open home. We're following legislation.
And that's such a valid point, because for people that were watching national news, everything around the country was playing out differently state by state.
Indeed.
So they were hearing in Victoria, well, prior to what happened in Victoria, you can do this and this and this, but in Hobart we can't.
Yep.
So that was causing a huge amount of conflict.
Actually, something just comes to mind that, again, what's the purpose of the REIT is that if you think about what you just described then, which is to the book, do the right thing, like that's always the REIT stance with our industry. And it might be worth noting that because the REIT does get a lot of calls from the consumers, is that right?
We do, yeah.
Yeah. But however, one of the things though is that the REIT is not will assist with information, but it's actually when it comes to dispute resolution, you say it's actually the REIT is there to mitigate disputes between agencies. Is that right?
Yeah. So essentially there is a piece of legislation called the Property Agents and Land Transactions Act, and if anyone has breached anything inside the guidelines of that, we recommend they direct themselves to the Property Agents Board, as opposed to the Real Estate Institute of Tasmania have their own code of conduct.
For
so
agents,
if anyone has breached the terms of the code of conduct, that's when we would expect to see the complaint.
Yeah, and see that I think will summarise my thought well, because the REIT as a registered training organisation, like you said, is that the first and foremost it's there to really create and bring out good people through the industry.
Correct.
And for those that I suppose would stray away, well, the REIT doesn't support those agents whatsoever.
That's right. Just because someone applies for a membership doesn't mean it's granted.
Yeah, see, that's interesting. But however, those that then are ethical agents, we'll use for lack of a better term. I mean, the REIT's got we've got the REIT's full support, because if you're working with a code of conduct based through the Act, well, we know that if you've done the right thing, we can support you in that sense. And that's why with that REI forms thing that you'd mentioned, because the REIT has produced a series of forms, leases, contracts, etc., that are that are written in line with the Act so that the consumers, when they see the REIT logo, can have confidence in what they're signing. Is that another good way
Correct,
to think about it?
and in conjunction with the Law Society of Tasmania. So those documents were created with the REIT and the Law Society in conjunction.
Absolutely. And I guess, fundamentally it's always about, nothing can be ruled with an iron fist, but constantly the Institute's really trying hard to make sure that, they support and deliver, a really highly respected and ethical industry with good operators so that the public can trust anyone who's an REIT member.
That's right. And I think that personal situation that we talked about a few minutes ago, where people are just people and we're just engaged to do a job and people can see that now, I think that's helped increase our credibility as well, because people can see us as people, just like their next door neighbour.
Yeah.
So it's not this suit wearing, expensive car driving individual who just wants your money. So I think they see that we're just people in the community. The wonderful things that agents are doing out there to raise funds for charities as well through their offices is phenomenal as well. That's giving back a lot to the community, and the community are welcoming that with open arms.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, harking back to day one, do you think you'd do anything differently?
I don't know that I would. I think that every single thing has been a learning exercise. And we were saying just before we started, like inside my own little business, I'm the account keeper, the contract processor, the property manager that does the routine inspections. I do the lot. But it gives me a huge amount of credibility as a president to be able to go to a function and be able to stand and talk to the receptionist.
Yep.
And I know exactly what they do because that's my job.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what the property manager's woes are because I do that too. And I know the stresses of sitting on the computer until 1 o'clock in the morning being the business owner and having to, reconcile the trust account and produce all the invoices and all those sorts of things, so I can relate to everybody.
Yeah, that's really interesting. If someone was thinking about getting into the real estate industry, what would be something you'd say, or would you encourage them, or with any words of caution in that way?
Yeah, not really any words of caution, but I would say to them, if you think about it and you try and think about something else and it doesn't leave your brain, get in.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot.
You just have to live it and breathe it. Know exactly what sort of individual you are as well, because sales versus property management are two completely different entities. I love sales. I'm very studious with regards to property management, but I see these individuals out there that are just cardboard cutouts of what a property manager should be. And then I see those in sales. And because, they're very, and I sort of think those that come from regimented backgrounds, so armed forces, teachers, those sorts of individuals make fantastic property managers because they are very regimented in the processes.
Yep.
Salespeople, we're feral. We are all over the place.
Yeah.
And
Leave a trail of destruction behind you.
Yeah. Well, someone will clean that up later.
Yeah.
But I think we just have to roll with it. So you'll get up in the morning, check your electronic diary, see that you've got 7 or 8 appointments, but very quickly, and that looks like it's going to end as a 7 p.m. night, and it ends up being 10:30, and you end up having 14 appointments. But that's not suited to everyone. But I love it.
Yeah.
So, and I think as long as people understand that the roles are very different and they pick the role that suits them the best, then that's, but I'd always say to anyone, if you think about it for more than 5 minutes and then you keep thinking about it again, this is probably the industry for you.
Yeah, gotcha. And I think the exciting thing is that there's so much more to it than what people would probably think that it is. And like you said, I think on the coal face, everyone can think it's like this weird, sleazy person who's driving around in a flash car, like snapping necks, cashing checks, and it's just not it at all. I mean, think about you, mate. Like you're our media manager, like you're working in real estate. Yeah.
I work in real estate. People ask me about real estate. I don't know. I'm just the guy.
Yeah, which is so cool, man. I think it's really exciting too that from my perspective, because obviously I've been in a long time as well, but for me, it's really encouraging that we've got great people as our industry leaders, and it only can be a good thing as the years roll on.
It is just incredible. I think for me, one of the most fascinating parts was when I was accepted onto the board, just sitting around that boardroom table and hearing all that knowledge. So representatives from the north, the northwest, bringing down their information and just hearing what everybody has to say, and when things are impacting the industry, to hear how this may have happened before and how it was dealt with and how we have to deal with it in the 2000s. And it really is an eye-opener.
Yeah.
I'm just
Incredible.
picturing the Lord of the Rings when they all meet and they're like, and my ox.
Yeah. Actually,
They join the fellowship and put it up.
That's exactly what it is.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
The Northwest come along with their axe. And you may have my ox. I think with that, it might be time to wrap it up. I'm sure
And I'm
Mandy's got.
so glad we ended on that analogy. 100%.
Welcome to the Fellowship of Real Estate.
Welcome to the fellowship.
No, thank you so much for coming in. It's
Pleasure,
been an
thank
absolute
you.
hoot. John had said prior to, he said, don't worry, with Mandy, we'll be able to talk.
We'll be able to get 20 minutes.
We'll get 20 minutes easy,
get
and
20
we've killed it. We've done an absolute
Perfect.
amazing job. It's really cool to see your eyes light up when you're talking about real estate,
do love
and
it.
it's clearly your passion, and you're
Yeah.
really into it. So, yeah, thoroughly appreciate you coming in. And
Pleasure, thank
and,
you.
Yeah, that was a really, really, really good listen.
Thanks, man.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
No problem. Cheers. Alrighty, that was a lot of fun, John. That was Mandy in from the REIT.
Mate, she's easily one of my favourite people.
Yeah, well, so that's what I wanted to talk about. Like, while she was here, I just kind of let you guys go. But did she work with you guys at McGregor or something?
she
'Cause
did.
She definitely
Yeah.
had a kind of knowing rapport of the two of you.
And she used to absolutely crush it in a good way, like because that was a thing. All her, she was instantly memorable to all her clients.
Yep.
It's like, once you meet Mandy, she's your girl, because she, you can just tell how passionate she is about the job.
Even as she came through the offices and was running into everybody, and was like, "Oh, Miss Mandy," and there was just this really kind of like everybody that saw her wanted to make sure they said, "G'day, it's so good to see you," not out of kind of any like professional courtesy, but just out of like, "Oh, there's that really lovely person that we know."
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, that's coupled with in one of the most intense work ethics of a person I've ever met. So
Yeah, well, as you went through kind of the rundown of, oh yeah, you started here and then you went to here, and so as you were building your Jenga tower,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm sure these guys have worked together in the past.
yeah, exactly.
So as you were coming up, she was training you. Is that how it was working? Were you already in the industry?
Well, because when I started, she was already working with us at the time, but I began my career as a receptionist.
Yep.
Well, before that, I was cleaning the actual office itself. And what happened was, though, is that as I was learning different parts, like Mandy was there teaching me different ways of working, so negotiation or understanding contract or presenting a contract or, just a whole different. And she actually helped me get and sell my second listing at the time, actually. Yeah, so that was
cool.
many moons ago.
So you're kind of the Luke Skywalker to her Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, definitely. I was lucky enough to have some pretty good mentors in that office. And one of the things that helped me, I think, more than anything is that you think, like Mandy's now the REIT president. My dad was a previous REIT president. So my whole journey through real estate's I've just had really good people that have wanted to take more on their shoulders than others. So it's not just about them. They've always had a larger picture for the industry in mind, and that's really changed the way in which that I see things a little bit differently, because I was exposed to a different way of giving back.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's probably, it was nice to sit with Mandy, but you can see, I have a lot of admiration for her, I respect her hugely. And that's why I think is really nice for people to hear voices like this, because the industry is scattered with like really, really good wholehearted people that want nothing but the best, and their means of being able to create that is through the service and real estate. And Mandy's just a great example of it.
Yeah, no, most definitely. It was a really good conversation. It was really good to see you guys kind of just go back and forth. Obviously, I didn't want to jump in too much, so we thank Mandy from the president of the REIT for coming in and talking with us this morning. I learnt some stuff. Hopefully, listeners out there learnt some stuff as well.
Yeah, cool.
And look, hopefully next week we will have the team all together. It's been so long between drinks, we can't seem to all get together.
But the thing is, we're pushing out the content. Got to keep the content going.
Got to keep it running.
Run on.
All right. We'll talk to you all next week.
See you at the next fellowship.
You have been listening to The Property Pod, recorded and edited by 414 Media House in conjunction with 414 Property Co.
This podcast is general information only, and the thoughts and views expressed is the opinion of our panel, and listeners should always seek then use their own investigation into any topic we discuss to ensure they fully understand their own situation.
It does not constitute and should not be relied on as purchasing, selling, financial or investment advice or recommendations, express or implied, and it should not be used as an invitation to take up any agent or investment services. No investment decision or activity should be undertaken on the basis of this information without first seeking qualified and professional advice.